Here we are for our big burnout conversation. Number 2 for me today. I'm joined by Stephanie Carlin, who is here to tell us a bit about her experience of burnout in education. We've just had a chat before I hit the big red button to talk about that kind of burnout experience. So I'm fascinated to hear how that's landed for Stephanie. Please feel free to join us by dropping chat in the comments. Please tag anything that you post with hashtag the big burnout conversation. We would absolutely love to hear from you. So Stephanie, welcome to the fancy studio that is my office. Welcome.
I love it. I love the grey and pink.
It shows the two sides of my personality, I feel.
I was going to say, I feel quite soothed by it.
Nice. Thanks very much.
And the coordination on the chair is top tier as well.
Yes, that is top tier. I am obsessed with matchy. So yeah, thanks for noticing that. That makes me happy. So tell us then, Stephanie, a little bit about you, where you've kind of come from in terms of the worky background, and then let's dive into that burnout experience that you've had.
Okay, yeah, the worky background, I can do that. So I'm currently, as of September 2023, a coach and trainer who's still working in education, very much motivated around some of the themes that we'll talk about today and how to make education sort of more sustainable and keep all those positives without the burnout or the brink of burnout, which is how I lived my life for so long. And then I'm also working part-time for a mental health charity, which has been really interesting in me reflecting on that career within education. So before that, how many years? 13 years in education. Wow. Secondary school teacher and 7 years as a middle leader, including head of humanities. And as much as this is a burnout story, it's one that's really based in the joy that teaching gave me, as well as this sort of darker side of education. So yeah, that's the setting of my experience and the scene.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. What's been really interesting in the conversations that we've had so far has been that every single person has this like real connection to their professions, this real connection to what they do, how they've done it, why they went into it. So I love that you're in that same space as well. It's really interesting to get those, get the themes from people, and when we're talking to people about burnout, because that may be one of those factors, is that we care so much, don't we? And we just want to do a good job, and then that then kind of feeds that burnout monster that lives inside, doesn't it? So yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really love about this conversation is that it's including people from those different professions, and it's not my burnout's worse than yours, or being a teacher is so much worse than being this, or it's that being a professional is hard, and how can we learn from this and make it better. And it's sometimes that competitive element is part of the problem. So it's like, 100%. Let's have this open discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it's been really almost refreshing to kind of, I don't know, get those like themes and symptoms across different roles, industries, people. It's almost been really like soothing, validating to have that, to see that it appears in lots of different roles, functions, industries, individuals. That's been really powerful for me actually over this last few days. So yeah, it'll be interesting to hear where yours kind of started. So 13 years in education, you say. Where do you think that kind of burnout mentality started for you? Have you got a sense of when that was?
It's such an interesting question. And I thought about this previously. And I think even early on, I accepted that it was really normal on a Friday evening to like fall asleep at the dinner table. Or I joke, but I did. Like the amount of times that happened, or we'd have people around and I'd be asleep on the settee, and I'm talking like 7:30, 8 p.m.
Yes.
So I think there's maybe that unhealthy expectation. It was quite early, and I never, acknowledged it really. But I think that probably is the start. But for it's just normalized, isn't it? It's normal to, be tired on a Friday, but maybe not to the point where you actually, like this at the table.
Like resting on your fork, like just gently.
Like full scale asleep on it. And the irony of like later in this conversation is that part of the problem was not sleeping. So it's that's another kind of early sign for me, was that not sleeping, being awake in the night. And I convinced myself that I was a kind of 5 hour, 6 hour a night sleeper. And since leaving education, I can tell you that is not true. I'm now at like 8 to 9 hours a night person, and it's brilliant. So there were little boundaries that were tested, and little signs that were ignored, and new things that I told myself were, just the way it is, or, that's who you are, or that's what teachers do, that were probably sown quite early. But I think really the real kind of difficulty stages were once I became a middle leader. And that's, purely because for the amount of extra responsibility and work you get, it's, 2 periods off your timetable, or, three periods off your timetable, and it just did not equate. And that was really the point where the job that was already hard just became impossible. And once you've got those responsibilities in a school, and you're leading a team, that time in school is sort of there, you're there for them, you need them, and you really believe that. So you're there for your classes, you're there for them. And when are you actually doing that work? And even if you're managing to do your middle leader work, when you're managing to do your actual, teaching, and teaching in general is set up that there is no way to do it just in the time that you are at school. Even when you're using your PPA, it's pretty much impossible. I'm sure there'll be some people going, "Oh, well, I do it absolutely perfectly," and hurrah for you, and I'm really pleased.
And those people are liars.
But there are very few of us that manage to, mark 10 sets of 30 books and bespoke lesson, and reply to those phone calls, and everything else within the actual time of the working day. And especially once it became, those kind of middle leadership responsibilities, and having certain points where we had huge curriculum change. The department moved into a new build, and it was like clearing out 19 years worth of other people's stuff, but with no extra time. And all these little things that can you just, and this needs doing, and it just becomes that there is not enough. I am not enough to do this. But you don't believe that, so you just
give a little
try.
bit more.
You just try. So those kind of later points really become the kind of crux of the story, I think. But the other thing that I would say quite early on that I believed, and I think this is a big part of education, is like, you're a teacher for the holidays. And that's and you kind of convince yourself that, and I've even said this, teaching's a lifestyle, like, that is the lifestyle. It's intense, and then you get your holiday. But actually, when you operate from that, it's your holiday then also becomes part of the pressure because you're catching up on your work. You're
Yeah.
seeing all of those people that you've ignored because,
Yeah.
you're a teacher in term time. And all of these things. And the holidays become part of the system. And they're also this thing that keeps you kept me just on the brink. Like I never fully burnt out because the holiday just about gave me the respite to just recover enough to go again.
Yeah.
And then, got to the point of collapse again. But don't worry, it is just
It's
enough
another 6
time
weeks.
off.
Yeah.
And then I realised now that I lived in this sort of system. And now when someone goes like, oh, do you miss the holidays? And I cannot honestly say no, like I don't, because I have evenings or at the moment because I'm walking the dog during the day. So I'm actually getting daylight. I have daylight between November and I don't know, March, whenever it comes back.
It's a gift.
It hasn't happened for 13 years. And I'm like, this vitamin D thing is wonderful.
It's amazing.
And so that I wouldn't trade. I just went away for Christmas and I was on a plane and it wasn't full. Like, what is this world? There are so many incredibly exciting things that happen that have nothing to do with holidays. I got my hair cut on a Thursday morning, Michelle.
Devil you.
I cannot tell you how incredible it was just to be like, I'm just having my hair cut in the middle of the day. And it's all these little like things that are like, this is amazing.
It's such a change. I hadn't thought about actually the kind of system of the education, the process, the schools, how we work, the hours. I hadn't even thought about that being compressed, which is ridiculous because it is, isn't it? It is compressed into X weeks a year, and I hadn't even thought about that almost creating its own intensity. So I think it's fascinating to me that as you said, you were kind of bumping along the bottom of burnout that in that time, because of course that is probably just about enough time to kind of almost feel refreshed and get sleep in, and like you say, see your friends, connect back again to the real world and who you are, and then you're back into it again. And I hadn't even thought about itself being a bit of a cycle of burnout in the system itself.
Yeah, certainly for me, the way I felt, it was like half term where you got the week, that's sort of enough to catch up your work, and maybe a little bit of downtime, and then the 2 weeks you just about manage a proper switch off, but you will have done something. And then you get the 6 weeks, which is almost ridiculous because then you're like, oh my god, what a world this is. But then you get the results are coming, and then what if all this wasn't worth it, and the result anxiety, and then that happens and you're like, oh, actually it's all right, I can do this job, but I'm thinking about work now, and I'm the head of department, everyone needs their results analysis, so then you're back to work unofficially, anyway. So it's that, I don't know, it's almost like a kind of false hope or a gimmick. But on the other hand of that, I have seen the world in some of those holidays, and I have lived the benefit of them, but I definitely wouldn't trade. So far, 6 months into the world without them, I feel like I've lived a lie.
Isn't it funny though, that perspective that kicks in only when you're out? So I had a really similar experience when I finally decided that's it, I need to stop, I need to take some time off sick. It was only then that I kind of almost had those like rear view mirrors kicked in, where I was like, oh wow, like that's a lot. Like it's no wonder that I'm in the state that I am, because I hadn't even thought to stop and look back at what on earth just happened. And it's only when you come out of it, I think, that you almost realise that it's been so challenging and so difficult and so intense. And I think it almost takes that period of time, doesn't it, to kind of come out and look back on it and think, wow, okay, that was a lot. So it's interesting that you've had a similar experience to that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you sort of move industry a little bit, there's things that just like being ill when you're a teacher is the worst thing, because one, there's the guilt. There's the guilt of, I have let those children down. Then there's the guilt of, somebody somewhere is at best just delivering some work to a classroom, but more likely, printing it off for you or creating it, and then somebody else is delivering to that. So there's all these people that you've let down, but you also have to, send in your email saying this is what there is and this is where you find the work. So you're in this ill situation, and it's that idea of, if you're ill, you're ill, and that's it, and you literally just say to someone like, I am ill. And you don't have to prove it. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to ring up with your best sore throat voice, or it's like you are professionally trusted to say you don't feel very well, and your work doesn't happen that day, and the school obviously has to keep running without you. But that guilt of it's easier if I just go in. And one of the real reflection points is in 2017. One day I was at school working, and I just put my hand on my neck, and I was like, what's on my neck? And I remember going into the student services area and just asking someone, is there a lump on my neck? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, what? And ran off to the ladies' toilet, and just this huge lump had just appeared on my neck.
Wow.
I still stayed in school, obviously. And I did eventually get a doctor's appointment, but all through this, I just carried on going to school with this. I bought a lot of collared shirts that year.
No.
I suddenly wore a lot of blouses.
Yeah.
And I was really worried about what this, huge lump that had arrived, but it didn't take any time off other than for the actual, appointments. And eventually, there was it was scanned, and it was just like an infection that had swollen up. And eventually, ironically, at the very end of Easter, at the Easter holidays, it just miraculously had disappeared. But that was a real physical sign that I was, I'd ignored the tiredness, and I ignored the fact that I lost my voice every year at the same time, and I'd ignored all those, and then this huge physical sign of your body is not coping. But you just don't stop. You genuinely believe that you can't, not because the system can't cope without you. I don't think I ever felt I was so important that they couldn't, but it is the letting down of the people that depend on you, and it's so you just keep going.
Yeah, I completely get that. I had a lot of I would have an annual tonsillitis experience, and that would be my sign to be like, oh, I'm really busy, maybe I just need to slow down a little bit. And I'd always have that kind of illness. And I think I read a quote somewhere that says, if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll have to make time for your illness, because your body knows when you need to stop, and we keep ignoring all of the signs until something horrendous, physical, something big, something that really, really forces us to stop, then kind of kicks in, because your body knows when you need to stop. We just all ignore those signs, don't we? Or we put it off, that cyclical moment, we put it off, and then we go, okay, I can stop now. That 2-week holiday, or the 6-week break, or a half term, or whatever. It's fascinating that we all do it. We all ignore those mental symptoms, those physical symptoms, until they get so big that they can't be ignored. So yeah, I'm not surprised that you bought a lot of collared shirts to hide it. I'm nodding along because I'd have probably done the same, to be honest.
What else would you do? And it's just I think about it now, I'm just like that. Why didn't you just have a rest?
Yes.
Just a few days off, it would have gone down
Yeah.
rather than this,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Kind of
6 month
protracted carrying it
period,
on. Yeah. Oh gosh.
um,
What was your kind of pivotal like aha moment when you kind of realized this isn't right, I can't keep doing this? What was it that kind of flipped the switch in your head?
um, there was a few years later, there was a more sort of, I don't know, behavior related. I felt frustrated at work, and I felt a bit uncharacteristic in my, unheard, and I'm doing all this, and I'd cried a few times at work and those kind of things. So there was another real kind of close to the brink moment, but that sort of resolved itself, and then I was kind of, just in the system, and it was manageable. And the thing that always comes back to it is like those interactions with your colleagues, those interactions with the actual teaching and learning bring so much joy that you do want to be there, like despite it all. It's that real commitment to that just, it's really hard to see any other driver between. But in my last school, I got introduced to transactional analysis. I got introduced to functional fluency and coaching. And that's what kind of eventually started to turn my head into, I actually love these things, and I love this thing. And for, 5 years or so, there was this kind of battleground going on between, can I do both? And the answer is no, because teaching, to be a good teacher, is, a full-time commitment. And I got to a point where I really had to consider that, do I even want to keep teaching if this is the life? By this time I had a partner, I had a dog, I had a nice house, and I'm paying someone to clean my house, and I'm paying someone to walk my dog, and I know my partner's lovely, but it'd be great to spend time there, and it'd be nice to be awake. And it just got to a point of, is this, life? And a lot of the climate around teaching in the sort of 13 years that I was a teacher really deteriorated in terms of, how the profession is seen outwardly. Lockdown was really, or since lockdown, it's been really hard that you feel like you've lost a lot of parental support. I think people think putting a PowerPoint on and saying a few words, that's the job, and it's changed that perception. Or, I educated my kid in lockdown, so, I know what it is to be a teacher now. And it felt everywhere that not only were you having this battle to do a good job, but everyone thinks it's crap anyway, or everyone
it's
thinks
almost less respected than it was.
And it just got to the point that the joy wasn't enough when I'd found something else that also meant I could help people, also meant that I can support the profession. And it's like, what if my purpose isn't just to, not just because it's still a really core job, but what if my purpose is more than what I thought teaching was? What if supporting more teachers, if I can do this work, it can prevent other good teachers leaving. Or on the flip side, if I can do this work and other people that are feeling like me realize actually their life is worth more than this treadmill and tightrope of burnout, then that's a calling that should be followed. And it was a real sort of tug of war about which love was going to win. But the ultimate was the lifestyle had to change. Like, didn't want to be a zombie anymore. And
Mm.
that's how I feel coming out of it and looking back now, is that for at least sort of 5 years of my life, I literally a zombie. I'm an extra in from the Waking Dead. I'm just like and feeling alive and making the most of my life, being the protagonist in my own life,
Mm.
just became irresistible.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I like that. That's a cool realization. So if you could give your, I'll say pre-burnout, Stephanie, but you're kind of, at the point at which, you think it kind of tipped for you. If you could give that Stephanie a kind of piece of advice, or, some kind of magic wand, what do you think that might be?
I think the first one would be that all humans need to sleep, and that is, if you go on like edgy Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, at the start, well, most Sundays, but definitely the start of term, it is just filled with teachers that are like, are we going to sleep tonight? What's,
Oh,
who's
yeah.
aiming for more than 2 hours? And, this, and I was definitely part of that. I said earlier, I genuinely believed I didn't need to, well, I knew I needed, but, I can function on this. I can do this. It's normal to wake up at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Do your to-do list. Like, oh, my best ideas happen at 3 a.m. Like,
Yes.
which they probably did, to be honest, because it was the only time that I actually had to think about me and my teaching. That was the only time that I wasn't thinking it from the perspective of someone else.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the protect, sleep, and that is absolutely something that I wish I'd done sooner. I've seen from a few of the other conversations, it's those boundaries that just because you can be a safe space or give that advice or whatever, you don't actually have to. And the work I've done with a model called functional fluency has really helped me to sort of understand when am I in structure and nurturing modes, and when am I overstepping into I'm dominating, or I'm marshmallowing and I'm giving all this to somebody else at the expense of me. And sort of learning to map my life through that has been a really helpful addition, really. And then that was one of the things that really actually tipped into why to leave teaching, because I was like, this model has done so much for me. I wish I'd known it like so much earlier. Like, how can I share this impact and this viewpoint, because it's really helped me create boundaries and understand myself, understand other people's behaviors. So yeah, definitely wish that I had learned that sooner.
Yeah, I get that. I think boundaries are just so powerful, aren't they? And I remember feeling really uncomfortable when I started to put them in, because my inner people pleaser was strong. Like, my inner people pleaser just ruled my life. But boundaries are really interesting because they teach people how to love us, right? They teach people how to love us in a way that works for everybody. So yeah, boundaries are really interesting for people who have experienced burnout. I think they're something that like a new shiny thing, but they are fantastic at just helping you realize that boundaries are healthy and helpful and safe. So yes, I love that boundaries is featured in yours as well.
Yeah, and so often people are far more resourceful than, and it's easier to go to the more experienced teacher down the hall, or the person. I think I do it quite often. We'll ask somebody something that actually, if someone says no and I then have 20 minutes, I'm like, all right, well, I can just do that, or this will work, or and it's saying no very rarely is a life or death decision. It just gives someone space, and they will come back. or you can arrange when to come back. It's those things that I did get better at. And certainly at the point I left, I was leaving because it was a choice rather than, maybe some of the other points I was just about on the brink of, I'm going to take my bat and ball home and do a runner here. But, I didn't get to that point, thankfully.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was key, I think.
So, as a kind of last finishing point, tell us a bit about how you work with educators now. What do you do? What's been the key kind of themes coming through for you from the work you do now?
So mostly it's through coaching, either people working with me as individuals or with some schools, and that's really been so varied. I have talked to people, very much about classroom specifics or behaviour management, or that class. Every teacher has that class at some point. But also much, more career-focused themes about progression, or is this the profession I want to be in, and all of that. And myself, one of the reasons maybe I stayed on the brink of burnout and not a full burnout was that my last school did invest in coaching for us, and seeing that the value of that, that really made me sort of have this new love and new passion. But I would like to take it a bit further than just keeping people on that tightrope, and really, And I feel like it's a really key time that there are more and more schools that are waking up to the recruitment and retention crisis, and what the aim is to help people that are either in that grey area of shouldn't I, is this what I want? And it's really hard to have that conversation at school, because as soon as you voice that, you don't know where that conversation is going to go, and it's just not the place to have it. Equally, sometimes your loved ones who really want to protect you and know that teaching is a really, such a safe profession. The holidays do, or the perception of holidays do, work really well for so many, people and families, that also at home sometimes that conversation isn't an easy one to have. So really giving people the space to have that dialogue, often with themselves, through that coaching space, has been one of the really most worthwhile parts. And what's been brilliant about that is that the decisions people have made at the end are all, it's not everybody's leaving actually, but some of them are staying and or moving school and all these different things, but helping people work out if teaching is for them, and if it is, how do we make it something that you can really thrive in, has been really key. So coaching is one element, and working specifically with the model functional fluency that I talked about understanding yourself, understanding classroom dynamics. I'm really kind of passionate about that. And within functional fluency, they also do an actometric test. So rather than the psychometric test that tells you you're this kind of person, this is where your energy's at right now. How is this serving you? How is it benefiting you and other people? Maybe some of these more pitfall behaviors, where does that show up for you? And that's been some of the work that I've really enjoyed as well. Just, I think the more, so the link to burnout is the more awareness we have of ourselves, those traits that we sort of fall back on, the more likely we are to recognize when we get these signs that are telling us warning, the warning light comes on. Yeah, so giving people the space to navigate their careers is what a lot of the work I'm doing comes down to, and it's been really sort of fulfilling. I feel really privileged to, listen to all these teachers that are doing amazing work, and the amount of them that don't realize that, like, the impact they're having, and just, reflecting back what they're saying is it's a real honor, my new role.
Yeah, it's good. That really comes across in how you talk about it as well. So it's lovely to see that coming through. So how can people get hold of you? So people who might be watching this live or watching the recording, how can people get hold of you? What's the best way to find you?
My LinkedIn is probably my most active profile, which obviously people should hopefully be having a look at.
We shall tag you in. Yeah.
Email me at stephanie-carlin.com, and I'm also on Twitter, Coach Steph C.
You've got merch. I'm so jealous.
Yeah. All that colour coding and no merch.
Michelle. I need to work harder, clearly.
So yeah, that's how to find me.
No, brilliant. Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing your experience today. I genuinely feel like even if we can support one person to think differently about what they're doing, where they're spending their energy and how they're feeling, we will have done a great job. So thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate your time, and it's been great to hear your story. So thank you. And I will conclude our beautiful live. I will tag you in the post as it launches up to Kelly's LinkedIn. The live finish takes a little bit of time. So with Amy, we did a little jazz hands while I finished, so we can do a little jazz hands while we finish.
No, I'm so introverted.